Hello, welcome. It's Francis here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid thee welcome. There is a subscribe button below if you would like to help support this channel by subscribing, and also a bell to be notified as to when I upload more content. I'm coming to you from Ghana country, and as such, I acknowledge the Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains, being the traditional custodians upon the lands on which I reside. So life's been sort of doing life things, and I wanted to get this video out a little bit earlier, but we've still got plenty of time because it's about the upcoming full moon, which will be taking place here in Adelaide on the 20th of August at 3:55 a.m. So that's Australian Central Standard Time. Depending on where you are in the world, it will more than likely be taking place on the 19th of August. It'll be in the astrological sign of Aquarius, which is the water bearer, at 27 degrees 15 minutes. And when there is a full moon, this means that the sun and the moon are directly opposite each other, and the sun is actually shining all its light onto the moon, revealing everything that's been hidden or has been in our subconscious, bringing it into our conscious awareness. So to find out what's being revealed, and also full moons are about closure, about something being completed, and I'll talk about that in a moment. If you have a copy of your natal chart, your birth chart, look to see what house 27 degrees 15 minutes of Aquarius is located in, and also whether you have any planets or points that are near to that, which are conjunct, because this could also give you more of an indication as to what is happening. This moon, as I said earlier, is a super moon as well, which means that when the moon does its sort of ecliptic around the Earth, it's at the closest point in the Earth, so it appears bigger and brighter from where we stand, and that's called the perigee. And if you are into new moon manifestation, as I said, this is something that's been manifested, or the seed that you've planted back during the new moon in Aquarius, which I think was actually, it's usually about 18 months ago. So we're looking at something in January 2023. And just one further point about this moon, it is being described as a blue moon. Now, there's two interpretations of what a blue moon is. The more common one is that it's the second full moon in a calendar month. That's definitely not what's happening here. But the second interpretation is that it is, I think it's the third full moon in a season, and that's the blue moon. So this is what's happening here. And I think it's also the first of 3 super full moons that we're going to be experiencing in a row. So this means that there is a lot of subconscious stuff coming up to the forefront. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it all depends on what other planets and points and transits are happening at the same time. So Aquarius, so it's the water bearer. It's a fixed air sign, so it supports our visions, developing where we want to go and what is possible once clarity of thought is gained. So Aquarius is all about the individual, creativity. It's about being different, being your own authentic self, sort of dancing to the beat of your own drum. And as it is, this full moon is at the end of the sign at 27 degrees. It's about being comfortable in who you are, being comfortable in your own skin, so to speak, accepting you for you, living your life on your terms. As the sun is in Leo, directly opposite the moon and conjunct with Mercury, which is our planet that rules communications, travel, contracts, all that sort of thing. It just happens to be in retrograde at 26 degrees Leo. This could indicate being stuck in a thought pattern, however, that Mercury is asking you to review, to reassess, to reevaluate. So this is what the sun is actually highlighting for you. There could also be an indication of the need to relax and not rush into speaking, communicating about something, your opinions, your thoughts, your input straight away. So this is also about Mercury. This is like taking to like the pause button and just waiting before you respond. So with the moon opposing Mercury, this is indicating the need to feel into something as opposed to just quickly thinking about it and responding there. You want to sort of like take the time out, see where it lands in your body, see how your body reacts before you vocalize or before you go down that rabbit hole, so to speak. Now, we do have some interesting transits, or we have had some interesting transits, I should say, leading up to the super full moon, energies which will continue to affect or even influence the moon. You may be feeling them already because I said I wanted to do this video a couple of days ago. So a lot of these transits are already happening. So we're feeling these energies. So I'll just do a bit of a recap then. So from the 12th of August, we had the moon opposing Uranus, which it does actually on a regular basis due to the fast moving nature of the moon going through each sign, 2.5 days. And this is sort of indicating some feisty energy due to Mars and Pluto being in alignment as well. So Mars is about sort of uppity, impulsive energy. So again, this sort of indicates taking a breath before reacting. 2 days ago, on the 14th, Mars was actually in exact conjunction with Jupiter, which was at 16 degrees of Gemini. So this was a great time for new innovations, to sort of start new creative projects. Jupiter expands everything. Mars has all that energy, and Gemini is a very creative, chatty, communicative sign. So it's got all these sort of things connected to it. Gemini is also in connection with communication. However, it is ruled by Mercury. And as I said, Mercury is currently in retrograde. So it's sort of like, before we sort of jump into action, just having another think about things. However, all these sort of energies, and there is quite a few, or should I say, there are quite a few conflicting energies due to various conjunctions. So it's almost like the need, the desire to jump forward. However, it's not quite the right time. So you're sort of like chomping at the bit, wanting to start off, but there's always sort of like delays. You just can't get going just quite at this time, which there will be a time where everything will sort of take off. So what's interesting is that Mars conjunct with Jupiter is actually forming what's called a mutable grand cross with the moon at this was back on the 14th. The moon was at 15 degrees of Sagittarius, Saturn was at 17 degrees of Pisces, and Venus was at 11 degrees of Virgo. So a mutable signs, or very changeable signs, a bit of flexibility. However, there's indication of new opportunities coming your way, but you still need to make room for them to sort of surrender the outdated beliefs or perceptions that you've had, things that aren't quite working for you, and also leaning into this trust and surrender aspect. We had Mars energizing this Saturn-Jupiter square. And this is actually happening, it's quite interesting, exactly on this full moon. It will reoccur on Christmas Eve, the 24th of December, as well as the 15th of June next year. So this Saturn-Jupiter square is quite a big one. it's sort of like a check-in point, because we had the huge Jupiter-Saturn great conjunction in December 2020. And what happened after that? We had the whole world go into a lockdown due to the pandemic, and we sort of like changed our whole way of doing things, or it sort of has sort of shaken the world up. So when we have this first square after such a major event, it is almost like the first check-in point to see what has happened, where we are at, have we learned anything? And it's quite interesting because Jupiter relates to law, legalities, that sort of thing. Saturn relates to governments, corporations, because it rules Capricorn. So it's looking at the laws and the legalities that maybe governments and corporations have put in place that have stemmed from the great conjunction that we had back in 2020. And I do acknowledge that there are other astrologers who have really sort of dived really deep into this, and I'll just leave it as that because they're the experts and I'm not. Okay, and I'm getting too far down a rabbit hole on areas which I'm not all that familiar with. So that happened on that's going to be the first square is happening on the 19th, but going back a little bit, on the 15th, a couple of days ago, we had Mars being an exact square. So a square is 90 degrees with Saturn. And this hard aspect is very beneficial for discipline. It will sort of like force and focus and drive you to achieve something. It is also a link to the military. But again, we've got Mars in Gemini, and Gemini is about communication. So Pam Gregory has suggested or hinted that this may be suppression of views on social media. To my knowledge, we haven't seen any, but I do tend to live in a political bubble. And as I said, we've got this Jupiter-Saturn square on the 19th. So while all these transits, they are very important to talk about because it's their energy that is building up and influencing this super moon, full moon that's happening here, as I said, on the 20th, or where you are, it might actually be the 19th of August. So, and there are other interesting things in relation to this moon, and that is, as I said, the sun is directly opposite it at 27 degrees, 15 minutes of Leo. It's conjunct with Mercury, which is retrograde, at 27 degrees of Leo. So we've got the sun and the moon with Mercury creating an exact or almost exact T-square with Uranus, which is at 27 degrees, 11 minutes of Taurus, as well as the asteroid. I don't normally talk about asteroids, but Pam Gregory does, and this came into her presentation, which I'll put the links below, which I found really interesting. So we've got this T-square between the sun and Mercury, the moon, Uranus, as well as Lilith. Lilith is the asteroid. It is 28 degrees of Scorpio. So this now is actually creating what's called a grand cross. I've recently just talked about the mutable cross, grand cross that we had. Now we've moved from a mutable, changeable grand cross to a fixed grand cross. So the fixed signs, which are Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio, with Uranus and Lilith being opposing each other, is, and being a fixed, it's sort of not as mutable, of course, not as changeable as the other grand cross. So lots of upheaval, shall we say, lots of challenges, lots of challenges for us to push our way through. So at the end of the world, it's just kind of things are going to be a little bit more difficult. They're going to be quite easy to move from A to B, so to speak. Could be a lot of revelations as well, because Uranus is about big changes. It's about shocks. It sort of just dismantles and brings about sudden surprises. And in doing that, it does create a degree of instability because we are so used to conformity, especially if you are sort of like plodding along in your life quite easily, quite sort of like going through the motions, so to speak, and Uranus will come in and shake you up. It's sort of like cracks open things, like revealing things, often unexpected. And then added to this, we've got the sun being a trine with the moon with Chiron. And Chiron is the wounded healer. It's 23 degrees of Aries. It's retrograde. So what could be exposed, what could be coming up again is something that reflects our deepest wound. And Chiron's not all that bad, because if you, depending on how you view your life, if you are into everything has a reason, we're here to sort of like go through the motions to learn things, especially on a cellular level. We need to sort of work and process through these really deep wounds, and they do surface from time to time. There's these things that sort of trigger us, and in our processing, in our own personal healing, not suppressing them, but actually working through our issues, so to speak, these actually turn into our deepest gifts so that we can then go ahead and offer other people who are struggling. And that's something to think about. So it's almost like every dark cloud has a silver lining. It's just like any tough situation that you're battling and going through, once you come out that other end, you are, I wouldn't say more evolved person, but you've got all these gifts, even if it's just survival of how to get through that situation, that could actually be of benefit for somebody else who finds themselves in a similar situation. So something to think about, even if it's just reminding people to breathe, to sort of ground themselves, to sort of hang on, giving them space, providing them with a little bit of emotional support, especially in a world where we have been shut off from each other for so long. That's completely different rabbit hole to go down. I'll come back to the astrology. So Uranus is about freedom, it's about liberation. And if we have been hanging on to the old, looking back to sort of the pre-COVID world, so to speak, it's the curveball that gets thrown to see if we have received the message. It's the planetary ruler of Aquarius, which is really interesting because that's where the moon is in, and the Aquarius is also all about the future. And Lilith is all about freedom. She does not stand up to the status quo. In the Hebrew myth, if you're not familiar with Lilith, she was actually Adam's first wife. She didn't submit to Adam, and as such, she headed off to the Red Sea, where she hung out with some of the demons, refusing to ever return to the Garden of Eden, even when the Hebrew God sent his angels after her and threatened her. So she's not interested in compromising at all. She's very much one for standing in her own sovereignty. She stands for her own truth, justice, and the like. There is actually an older myth about Lilith that sort of connects her back to ancient Sumer, where she was described as the screech owl, the little tooth, that lived in the hoopla tree that grew in the goddess Inanna's garden. And when Inanna wanted to make herself a new throne, she got this tree cut down, only to find that there was a snake living at the base of the tree, which according to myth, Gilgamesh was said to have killed, and a zoo bird, or a lilitu, was living in its branches. And I do talk more about Lilith in my book, Encountering the Dark Goddess, A Journey to the Shadow Realms. I might do another video about that later, because she is becoming popular these days. And I think there's a lot of sort of resurgence in her myth, in what she stands for as well. Anyway, so we have this grand fixed cross that includes the sun shining its light on the moon, exposing all to see. We've got Chiron added to this mix, so it could be exposing our deepest wounds that we need to work through. Then we've also got Uranus and Lilith, encouraging us to sort of break free, find new ground, stand in our own sovereignty, or what actually really resonates with us. However, this won't be as easy as just doing that, because there is also a degree of discomfort connected with this assertion. And it could be something that we have considered to be actually unbreakable, actually breaking, actually ending, because the full moon is all about endings. Something that's we've been working towards that's actually failed. And again, all of this sort of connects back to the unpredictable influence of Uranus. So if we take another look at Uranus, as Pam Gregory reminds us, Mars was conjunct with Uranus back in mid-July. And at that time, Uranus was conjunct with the fixed star Algol, and the myth of which I'll mention in a moment. However, there is a connection with respect to, as Pam says, people losing their heads, so to speak, especially in positions of authority or leadership. So hindsight's always a good thing in astrology. So when we look back to see what has happened since mid-August, there are two things in particular that really stand out. The first, on the 13th of July, we had the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, where a bullet grazed his ear, so that's close to the head. Then on the 21st of July, at the full moon, when the moon was actually in the anaretic, the end degree of Capricorn, rules sort of governments, big business, etc. Joe Biden, the president of the US, announced that he wasn't going to contest the upcoming US election. Very interesting. Added to that, on the 19th of July, do you all remember that we had that huge cloud strike malfunction that caused a major problem, especially here in Australia, with the internet, with banking, airport chaos, especially how everybody is now paying tap and go with their credit cards. They couldn't do that. There were hospitals being affected. There was a lot of chaos and mayhem, all which are governed by Uranus. Again, it's unpredictable energies. Okay, so let's just sort of talk a little bit about Algol. And I thought I'd just sort of dive into this a little bit, because as I said, Pam Gregory mentioned this star. She's actually mentioned it a number of times. And as such, it's come up again. So I thought I'll do some of my own investigations. Now, Algol is often referred to as the blinking eye of a demon. So we've got Lilith, and now we've got the blinking eye of the demon. And it's called that due to it appearing and disappearing, only to reappear in the night sky. And astronomers think this possibly is due to it being a binary star that actually eclipses itself every couple of days. However, this eclipse motion or transformation has given Algol a rather sinister reputation, one not to be trusted. It's also linked with evil, whatever that means, depending on where you come from, suffering, pain, death, intoxication, and also tragedy. Now, what's interesting is that Algol is actually located in the Perseus constellation. And Perseus is, or was, according to Greek myth, the slayer of the snake-haired Medusa. which is in the astrological sign of Taurus, the bull. And Algol is said to represent the center, the third eye of Medusa's head, thus being connected with her. And Medusa is another goddess that I explore in my book, Encountering the Dark Goddess. Where part of this myth that we're probably more familiar with today is the fact that she was a monstrous Gorgon monster whose stare would turn people to stone. However, Perseus was tasked to decapitate her and to bring her head back to Athena, or I think, no, it was actually back to a king who was going to marry his mother. And Perseus was able to do this due to the aid of various Greek gods and goddesses, including Athena and Hermes. So this is sort of a bit of a patriarchal telling of her story. These older myths sort of interwoven that portray Medusa somewhat differently, almost like a sort of a fourth story, in that she was actually a very attractive and devoted devotee of the goddess Athena. However, due to her attractiveness, she actually attracted the unwanted attention of Poseidon, the god of the sea, Zeus's brother. And Poseidon actually raped her or violated her in Athena's temple. However, instead of showing compassion towards her devoted priestess, Athena actually punished her for defiling her sacred temple, turned into a Gorgon monster, and drove her to live in a cave. So, as Algol embodies this energy of Medusa, this means that Algol embodies both the sort of monster aspect that patriarchy has sort of like put out or dressed Medusa up as, interpreted her as well as sort of this devotee goddess connection as well. What is really interesting and often overlooked in her myth is that Medusa is also connected with transformation. Not only did she sort of transformed those who looked upon her, transforming them into stone, but when Perseus cut off her head, drops of blood, her blood fell onto the ground, and as such transformed into the beautiful winged horse Pegasus, as well as the humus Caesura, whose name means he who has a golden sword. So we can look at Algol in a negative light, or we can see it as a star of transformation, of magic, of protection. It's really up to us. And it's often said that Algol will appear in astrological charts of radical artists, that Picasso actually had Algol in his chart. But at the end of the day, depending on how you perceive Algol, it does tend to remind us that despite tragedies, as I mentioned earlier, we too have great power within us. We can rise again and transform like Venus from the flames, so forth, and even find new purpose no matter what life or where life takes us. So it gives us that hope. Again, it's all about transformation, surrendering the old, and just sort of trusting and going with the flow. And this is basically all we can do when we go through these rather chaotic energies. And this is important to just keep in mind because Uranus is going to stay conjunct with Algol until the end of October this year, and then returning once again to be conjunct with Algol in April, May next year. So where it could very well be a knock-on effect when it comes to the energy, that something will be reactivated or be recharged, so to speak. After all, Uranus is in Taurus. So this is like our foundations, this is sort of our values. Things are sort of like really 4 feet on the floor, so to speak. And it's also about money as well. So again, our values, how we sort of relate to these things, how we feel secure. And it's going to remain in Taurus until 2026. So this charge could be electric, could be electromagnetic. Astrologers are noticing a lot more solar flares, seismic activity happening, like volcanoes, earthquakes, more combustible energies and the like. It could also, these earthquakes could also relate to political earthquakes. It's sort of like, not say a warning, but a reminder of cyber attacks. There could be some internet issues, so update your security, back up your files. It could relate to power outages, aviations, disputes, etc. Again, all these things are ruled by Uranus. Basically, a repeat of what we had a few weeks ago with the CrowdStrike outage. So it is worthwhile to become a little bit more vigilant and not take things so much for granted. Another astrologer that I follow, Molly McCord, talked about buying a few extra items of food. If you're able to, like a few more canned soups, things like that, or squaring away a few extra dollars every now and then, like $5 here, $5 there. So you're not so reliant on credit cards and tap and go should we have another outage like we did on the 19th of July. And another point to just keep in mind is that Uranus is also in relation to authenticity, our own individual or unique energy, our own individual and unique essence. So it could actually be shaking us up. So to stop becoming sort of carbon copies of everybody else or social media influencers, and sort of being more comfortable in our own skin, who we are. And this theme is echoed in sorts with a binary classical Kuiper object known as Algeria, which just happens to be at 20 degrees 36 minutes of Gemini, and with Mars becoming conjunct with Algeria and Jupiter mid-September. Again, Pam Gregory has mentioned Algeria and got very excited about this conjunction due to Algeria's connection with Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, which was a little bit new to me. So again, I decided to do my own little digging, considered this is part of the world where I live. Now, the Dreamtime story as a concept is basically a creation story, but it goes beyond a creation story. And this sort of fits in with Jupiter, because Jupiter is all about expansion and visionary, expansive dreams, dreaming bigger than before. And the Dreamtime stories, and there are a number of them because there's all different, they're called countries here in Australia, different groups or family, they're not clans, but the different Aboriginal peoples here. A majority of them have their own Dreamtime story. You may have heard of the rainbow serpent. That is one character, animal, Dreamtime being that appears in a lot of them. But Altagira is a creator sky god from the Agrandi people who live in Central Australia around Alice Springs. And it was said that back in 1908, when a German Lutheran pastor and missionary recorded the Agranda language, instead of perceiving Altagira as a proper verb, like meaning to dream, where it literally translate to see God as an eternal being that has no beginning, just sort of was just there. This German or Lutheran pastor actually theorized it to be a noun, and this is why there is now a description of Altura as being a tall, strong man with red skin, long fair hair, and emu legs, who had many red-skinned wives, and they had all dog legs. And they all lived in the sky with their children, where the body of the land flowed through the river, which was the Milky Way. Now, I find this really interesting because a couple of months ago, I was actually up at Alice Springs, and I became aware of what was called the caterpillar dreaming, because when you're actually in Alice Springs, it's sort of surrounded by these hills, and these are the East and West Diurnal Ranges. And according to the caterpillar dreaming story, the creation stories of the Uganda people, it was these great caterpillars who created the land and came together and therefore sheltered Alice Springs. So, as the creator God in the Dreamtime story, Pam Gregory considers that Aldera is important for this upcoming conjunction because it's a perfect time to shed any social programming that in particular hides your own authenticity. And because it's in connection with the dream time or the dreaming stories of the Aboriginal people, and we've got Jupiter adding to the mix, it is all about the big dreaming long-term goals, bringing things into manifestation and realizing that things can only occur in your life when you dream them. You've got to sort of plant that seed first and not to sort of dismiss something because you think it's too out there. Just plant that seed, dream into those big visions and see where things will take you. Pam also mentions that the Uganda people apparently believe that everyone exists not only in normal everyday reality, but also in the dream time, in a higher state, in a light body, which could also be on an astral plane as well. And it's this higher aspect of us that is this continual inspiration for our day-to-day life here on Earth. It's almost like this physical body that we have here is an aspect of our light body, of our astral self. But this isn't the real self, if that makes sense. We're sort of living through here. And so what would make sense is like the theme or the phrase that we've heard that we are spiritual beings living in a physical existence. Is that our true aspect is from this higher plane. And this is another aspect of the Dreamtime stories, is that our Dreamtime existence, our imaginary, if you want to call that, which is connected to the astral, that is actually our true reality, not this. And again, this sort of ties in with even Eastern philosophies that consider this life that we live as Maya, as an illusion. It's not the true aspect of ourself. Getting a little bit too metaphysical in areas that really need more sort of background for people who are not aware of these concepts. But yeah, again, I just won't climb out of that rabbit hole. So it's all about links to our authenticity. So we've got Uranus sort of like speaking very loud about this. We've got Aldera talking about this. We've got Jupiter expanding these big ideas. So if you are having big dreams, let yourself dream big. Just really dream big. It's okay to just sort of put it out there. Okay, back to this super full moon. We've also got the sun trine with the asteroid Eris, with the moon sextile to Eris. Again, Eris is an asteroid. I don't normally talk about asteroids. Pam Gregory does, and I know I'm referencing her quite a bit because her update was very, very interesting. So Eris is actually the warrior sister to Mars, and again, she appears in Greek mythology, where she was said to have been the only goddess not invited to the wedding. I think that was between Paris and Helena of Troy. But she attended anyway, and she actually created a lot of chaos. She had a golden apple that she threw amongst all the goddesses, and just merely stated that this was for the pharaoh. So all the goddesses sort of squabbled, fighting over who claimed that title, and apparently that led on to the Trojan War. But what's interesting is that Eris is also linked to truth, justice, no compromises. She's also connected with people, everyone basically having a voice to be heard. She's about equality, having equal weight in society, and also brings back into that aspect of truth and authenticity. We have another mutual T-squared, this time created by Venus, which is at 18 degrees of Virgo, and Saturn, which is 17:28 minutes of Pisces. They are squaring Jupiter, 17 degrees, 28 minutes of Gemini. And squares, as I said, can be difficult because especially if we are fighting, it's all about sort of surrendering and letting go of the old energy. And then we are able to move through the challenges and actually see the opportunities that are there for us. Saturn, of course, again, it's about constriction. It's about hanging on to things like how it's been traditional. Jupiter is all about expansion, new ideas, new information. Venus in Virgo is wanting to know the facts, get all the facts correct, get all the details down. Virgo is also connected with health issues. Jupiter is about truth and justice. However, there's this bit of a tension happening between Jupiter and Saturn. Mutable energies, as I mentioned earlier, are shifting, expanding. If that's not enough, we've also got Neptune at the last degree of Pisces, sort of indicating shifting sands, so to speak. Sort of what is true, what is not true, especially if we sort of add social media to the mix. But Virgo is also about discernment. So this is why it's sort of asking us that as we go through these changes, it's very important to drop into our heart space in order to find the truth as we move through these shifting sands. There's going to be a lot of expansions, a lot of elaborations of the truth. So all what I've been saying in this report, and it's quite a lengthy one, I've gone down lots of rabbit holes. So it's about sort of sitting with the information that we hear first. So dropping into our heart space and seeing where things lie. Don't forget that Mercury's still in retrograde. So instead of like taking the next action, especially in communications, just sort of wait a few moments. But there are strong themes about authenticity. There are also strong themes connected with the divine feminine, which I'm finding really interesting because we do have Lilith, Venus, Eris, but the divine feminine being equal to the divine masculine. So it's all about truth and honesty, justice, equality, sovereignty. There are also huge energetics building up, making things probably a little bit more rockier, to say the least. But again, it's encouraging us to surrender the old, the outdated, to look at where we have been dragging our heels, where we've been stuck, look at what we've been hanging on to and let go. And if we are not able to let go of the past, ask ourselves why. Things could also start showing up in your life that you realize you are completely done with things. That's almost like flogging a dead horse, so to speak. That it's sort of like, haven't I really done that already? Why is it still coming up? And it's just letting things go once and for all. So overall, it's probably going to be, the energetics probably going to be a little bit rocky. not all that comfortable, but it's time to truly surrender and to let go. And this will actually help us move forward. So it's really time to take a deep breath and see what next will sort of guide us through. So deep breaths, self-care, meditate, learning how to chant mantras. And as I mentioned last time, I will be doing a couple of online courses through the College of Psychic Studies. I'm just going to share my screen. And so the College of Psychic Studies is actually based in the UK. And the first one is coming up on Saturday, the 24th of August at 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Now that is UK time. So you would need to work out what it is for you. I know here in Australia, especially in Adelaide, that will be around about 7 p.m. These probably won't work out really good to go live for people in the US, but it will be recorded. So while you may not be able to get online with me, if you sign up, you will still get a recording. So the first one is in relation to creating change with Kali Ma. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that Kali is one of my sort of go-to goddesses. Again, I've got a chapter connecting with her in my Dark Goddess book. And I've been working with Kali, or she's been working through me for, heck, 10, 15 years now. I can't remember. But in this, it's only 3 hours, we will be connecting with her. We'll be sharing her stories. We're looking at her history, looking at some of the techniques to connect with Kali, and in particular through mantra, looking at various mantras that she connected with her, looking at beach sounds. And I also have a meditation where you can meet her yourself. So that's in August. In October, I have a similar, I'll just click on this link, a similar workshop, this time with Lord Ganesh, or Ganesha, the elephant-headed god. It's one of my favorites as well. We'll start at 11 p.m., so 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. UK time, so half an hour later, so that's 7:30 p.m. Australia time. Again, it will be recorded. So if these time zones do not work out for you, you will get a recording. And there is another one. I'll just go through that I'm having in September, and that is the Smorgasbord for the Soul, where it's just like a fun sort of 3-hour exploration through various sort of psychic or intuitive techniques and tools to sort of gain you that confidence when you are using those abilities. So I'll just stop sharing that. So that was just a little plug of some things that I've got coming up that can actually help you if you're interested in mantras and the like. I do use mantras quite a lot, and I do find it is really helpful, especially when you come through or come up against these big shifts that we have coming up. So I'll put the links below if you are interested, you want to find out more about them. Likewise, I will put all the links below to the astrologers that I have used to prepare this video, because they are the experts, I'm not. And as such, I do hope that it's been a little bit of a windy one. This video about the August super full moon in Aquarius has been of interest. And so there's a lot of energetics happening. You may be finding their energy affecting you already. I know I certainly have. So if you would like to put some comments below, please feel free to do that. I do go back and read all of them. If you haven't done already, please subscribe, because this helps support my channel. And if you are interested in me doing a live, I really do need your support so I can get the numbers up before YouTube allows me to do a live. So big breath, got a little bit of a rocky road ahead of us, and I think some of the astrologers are saying even until the end of the year it's going to be a little bit bumpy. So if all you can do is just breathe, the fourfold breath, or any sort of yogic breathing, then to ground, self-care, that might be all we can do until we move through these times of change. And anyway, hope you are well. Do take care until we see each other again. Blessing.